So, guten Tag und herzlich willkommen zu unserem Webinar heute zum Thema Mehr aus Teams Besprechungen und herausholen. Es freut mich, dass Sie heute Nachmittag Zeit gefunden haben, mit uns durch einige Blicke hinter die Kulissen von Teams und auch durchaus ein bisschen so in die Admin-Gelegenheiten einzugehen, wie man aus Teams mehr rausholen kann, speziell zu Besprechungen. Mein Name ist Urs Wermerlinger, ich leite das Marketing bei Cycle. Ich darf Sie heute ins Webinar einführen und werde dann auch am Schluss noch kurz nochmal dran kommen. Dazwischen gehört die Show dann ganz Michele Gasagta. Er ist Senior Cloud Consultant beim Cycle und Spezialist für alle Fragen, wenn es um Office 365, aber natürlich auch Microsoft Teams geht. Bevor wir starten, 2, 3 kleine Housekeeping-Sachen. Sie sind als Teilnehmer stumm geschalten. Sie können aber jederzeit das Q&A-Feature brauchen, hier in Teams Live-Meetings, um Ihre Fragen zu stellen. Ich werde dann während des Webinars bereits versuchen, die Fragen zu beantworten, soweit dass ich das kann, oder sie dann auch Michele zu stellen, nach seinem Teil in der Mitte. Sie können auch in Teams hier direkt Untertitel einschalten. Wir haben das aktiviert in diesem Meeting. Sie können diese Untertitel dann auch verwenden, wenn Michele, er wird seinen Vortrag in Englisch halten. Wenn Sie deutsche Untertitel zu seinem englischen Vortrag sich einblenden möchten, so ganz im Sinne ein bisschen von Eat Your Own Dog Food, versuchen wir hier die Möglichkeiten von Teams Live-Events gleich auszunutzen. Dieses Webinar wird aufgenommen. Wie gesagt, führen wir das in Live-Events durch. Wir werden Ihnen nach dem Webinar auch die Unterlagen und den Link zu den Recordings senden. Ja, zu LiveTiles ganz kurz. Cycle ist eine Tochterfirma von LiveTiles. LiveTiles ist eine globale Technologiefirma, spezialisiert auf Digital Workplace. Wir sind in verschiedenen Ländern tätig, unter anderem hier auch in der Schweiz unter dem Namen Cycle, mehrfacher Goldpartner von Microsoft und in dem Bereich Digital Workplace, Intranets, aber auch Office 365 und Teams unterwegs. Zu Microsoft Teams, glaube ich, muss ich nicht mehr sehr viel sagen. Teams ist mittlerweile und nicht zuletzt auch dank Corona zum Standard für Zusammenarbeit und Online-Meetings geworden. Ich habe hier eine kleine Grafik von Microsoft direkt, also Microsoft selber eingeblendet, die zeigt, wie die Teams Adoption oder die Teams Usage während des Corona-Ausbruchs und des Lockdowns gestiegen ist in den einzelnen Ländern. Mittlerweile zählt Microsoft 75 Millionen tägliche Benutzer auf der Teams-Plattform, eine Verdoppelung von vor Corona oder eine Verdreifachung von vor einem Jahr. Doch ein sehr, sehr starkes Wachstum, das die Plattform auch, muss ich sagen, erstaunlich gut bewältigt hat. Aber wie immer, wenn etwas sehr, sehr schnell wächst und sehr viele Kundenteams ganz neu einsetzen, gibt es auch bestimmte typische Fehler, die wir bei Kundendeployments sehr oft auch sehen. Nicht immer, aber sehr oft. Wenn es darum geht, zum Beispiel eben Teams einzuführen als reines IT-Deployment-Projekt und die Benutzer ein bisschen vergessen werden oder man einfach nur Teams einführt als App und dabei ein bisschen vergisst, dass eigentlich Teams vor allem ein Frontend für SharePoint, Exchange oder OneDrive oder andere Office 365 Dienste sind und einige mehr. Dazu haben wir auch einige Blogposts auf unserer Webseite Ihnen zur Verfügung gestellt, die diese typischen Fehler zusammenfassen, aber auch sagen, wie man sie verhindert. Oder auch ein E-Book, das eher dann auch positiv formuliert, auch ein Guide gibt, wie man Teams praxisorientiert dann einführt. Als Cycle haben wir dieses Vorgehen zusammengefasst in einem 4-Punkte- und 4-Phasen-Plan, mit dem wir Projekte beim Kunden typischerweise durchführen. Zuerst geht es immer genau darum zu verstehen, was Teams genau ist, wie Teamwork in Teams funktioniert, aber auch wie Teamwork im Unternehmen selber heute passiert und wie die beiden zusammenfinden. Implementation, Ausrollen, Pilotprojekte, gleich zu Beginn weg das richtig aufzusetzen, Manage, Governance, welche Fragen müssen beantwortet werden, wer darf was, wann wer zum Beispiel darf Berechtigungen verteilen, wie lange gelten die und natürlich auch mehr Maßnahmen, um die Benutzerakzeptanz oder Adoption zu fördern und das auch dann logischerweise zu messen. Also wenn Sie Fragen oder Bedarf haben für solche Dienstleistungen, Michele und ich sind gerne, stellen uns gerne zur Verfügung, Sie kurz dann auch im Anschluss an dieses Webinar, auch in den nächsten Tagen durch unsere Möglichkeiten hindurchzuführen. Nun aber zum eigentlichen Thema von heute und es freut mich hier an dieser Stelle das Wort Michele zu übergeben, der uns wirklich durch verschiedene Schritte durchgeht und durchführt, wie man aus Microsoft Teams Meetings mehr rausholen kann. Michele, bitte, the show is yours.
Thank you, Urs. Thank you for the introduction and welcome everyone to this meeting, live webinar. I'm really excited to be presenting this and excuse the change of language, but I'm sure, as Urs mentioned, you can use the subtitles if you need to. And yeah, I'm sure you will get something out of this live webinar. So let's look at the agenda. So these are the topics that we will be looking at today. So we will start from some concepts about meeting types. We'll also be talking about document sharing in meetings. We'll touch a little bit about audio conferencing, which is something that you might be already familiar with. Then some little function and options that are being rolled out very frequently, and it's also good to know because they are quite useful. We will also touch on the guests. Guests is quite a big topic in the whole 365 ecosystem, but in the context of Teams, we will see that there are different types of guests and what they can do. We will look at meeting recordings, where are they stored and why it's important to know. And then a little bit on the admin side, we will look at some policies that can be applied. So it's going to be useful for both end user, experienced user, and also for admin. I'll try to make something that you can really take away from this webinar. Okay, let's start with the first topic. So meeting types. I'm sure you have all been in a situation where you've been invited to many meetings or you have organized meeting yourself and you don't know where to find your notes or your documents. This is why it's important to understand how we can prepare, track, and collaborate meetings and understand really what the two types of meetings are. In fact, there is a concept of channel meeting, which is not very talked about, but it's very important, and it's going to be probably a very good practice that you can implement if you're not using it already. So let's look at the two types of meetings. So the first one, it's the classic meeting, the one that we are all used to. It's called private meeting in the Teams context, but it's really anything that you're used to create from your Outlook application. You create a new meeting, you use probably the Outlook add-in, and it's visible to the invited people only because it's only the participants that you put into the recipient field that will be able to participate or to see this meeting. You might or might not be aware that when you schedule a meeting in Teams, you can start a conversation or even share files even before the meeting starts. So you can do that before, during, or after the meeting. And we will see this in a moment. But in the case of private meetings, all these conversations will be accessible via the chat function. And lastly, these private meetings can also be started ad hoc from an existing chat or from a function that it's called Meet Now. So let's have a look at the private meeting first. I'm going to switch my window to a browser. So this is your Teams calendar. You're probably used to it. And we can pretty much pick a slot here and we can start a new meeting. Yeah. So this is, I will just call it demo meeting or demo private meeting. And here you can put the attendees. So in this case, I'm going to put one attendee that is in this organization, in this tenant. And that's pretty much it. So it's nothing really different than creating the meeting in the Outlook window, which I'm bringing up here just for you to get a visual as well. You're probably all familiar with this one. So you create a meeting, you put your participants, and then you save pretty much the meeting. So And that's our private meeting. Now, the point that I want to make here is that that I mentioned before is that these private meetings, they can be used to start the conversation before the meeting actually starts. So in this case, I can, the meeting occurs at 4:30. I can join the meeting and I can start conversing. I can start attaching files. Now, when the meeting is over, and that's the other point that I want to make, these meetings will be accessible from the chat window. So this is a previous meeting that has taken place a couple of days ago. I just want to show you that this is where you find the previous conversation. So there has been some files shared, some chatting, and also other files here that are available. So that is the main difference. And the last part that I want to show you about private meetings is the Meet Now function. So here, when you go to your calendar, you have this button called Meet Now. Now, this is nothing different than starting a meeting spontaneously, a private meeting. The only difference is actually you don't send an invite. You just join the meeting, and I'm just gonna join it now for to show you what I mean. And then once you are in the meeting, you will be able to invite people from this window, or if you have audio conferencing enabled, you will also be able to actually type in a phone number, and then you can actually dial out for specific people. We will see this a bit later when we talk about audio conferencing, but just keep in mind about this Meet Now function. So the Meet Now, it's another way to create a private meeting. I'm going back to the slides now, and I want to talk about the really important part, which is the channel meeting. As you can imagine, a channel meeting happens within a channeling team. So all the members of that team will be able to join this meeting. And the main difference, for the moment at least, is that a channel meeting can only be started from the Teams client or from the web. You cannot start or schedule a channel meeting from within your Outlook, at least for the moment. And the other main difference is that all the meeting-related discussions that happen before, during, or after the meeting will be part of the channel. This is the real advantage of having channel meetings. So you will not be, asking yourself, where are all these notes and where are these documents, because they will all be staying within the channel. Again, anyone who's a member of the channel, or the team in this case, will be able to see all these conversation files. And likewise, as a last point, team members will also be able to start a channel meeting with the Meet Now function, and guests will be able to. So let's look now at channel meetings. So I'm going back to the calendar, and I'm creating another meeting here. And the experience is pretty much the same. So I'm gonna say test channel meeting. And the important part to remember here, however, is that you choose a channel from this section. So this is a list of teams. And then after you choose the team, you have to pick a channel. And that's how you create a channel meeting. So you can put the attendees if you want them to receive an email. Otherwise, you don't have to put them, because as we mentioned before, all the team members or channel people that are visible for the channel will be able to access this meeting. Okay, I'm just going to close this. I'm going to show you a meeting that has been created already, just in the interest of time. So I'm going to the general channel for this team. And here you see that this meeting has been created a couple of days ago, and it's within the channel itself. And I'm going to expand the conversation here. And you see that there's been a conversation that even started before the meeting. So the meeting was at 9 a.m. and someone wrote at 8:49, and they also shared a document in here. And so the main point that I'm trying to take across here is that all this conversation, all the files are part of the discussion, which is a part of this channel. This file, in fact, will be visible in the files section of the channel. You're probably aware that every channel has a a file section. This is a default tab that comes for every channel. And you can see that that test file from the meeting is now part of the whole channel files. And lastly, I want to show you the Meet Now function in a channel meeting. So this is the equivalent of the Meet Now that we've seen before, except that it happens within the channel. So you can actually start the Meet Now, and it's pretty much an impromptu meeting. So it's something that you can start ad hoc, and maybe people that are in the channel or for other teams, they can just join spontaneously. Otherwise, from here you can also schedule a meeting. So it brings you back to the other functionality of scheduling a meeting. Now I will just start the Meet Now because I want to show you one other functionality that you're probably aware. I'm just going to switch window to show you another member of the organization. So you can see that if now I switch to a different channel, you will see that a channel that has a meeting in progress will show this little camera. And so people that are part of this team, they can see, okay, a meeting started there, maybe I forgot about it, and then they can just go to the channel and they can join the meetings as well. Whether this is a scheduled one or it's a Meet Now, they will be able to see it through this icon. Okay, so this is the main takeaway for the channel meetings. And I just would like to keep going with the next topic, which is function and option. So this is something that is being rolled out, as I mentioned before, quite regularly. So Teams is a very quick evolving platform, and new functionalities and features are added very often. And a couple of things that have been added recently, it's about managing attendance, but we will also see other options. The first one is, it's very simple. It's more like a visual change, but on the left-hand side, you will see that this is the classic window that you open in the browser when you join a team. It's not super clear what to do because they are different options. And so, long story short, Microsoft is rolling out this more clear interface so you can see if you want to download the Windows app, if you want to continue in the browser, or if you want to open the Teams app if you have it already. So it's just a cosmetic, but I think it's really part of the improvements of the user experiences that Microsoft is bringing out. Now, the next option is to download meeting participants. This was also a very requested feature, apparently, based on user voice. And it's something that you can do if you are the meeting organizer. There is a little icon here that you can use, and you will be able to download the people that have been joining the meeting while you were presenting. Now, if you are a meeting organizer, you probably have noticed that you can also have some action on the participants. And one of these options is to make someone a presenter or an attendee. So a presenter can obviously present the screen, and an attendee can only see. And so you can promote or demote these roles as you please, because you are the organizer. So in this case, this XX guest was a presenter, and I can make him an attendee. You can also pin some of the participants, you can remove them, and you can also mute or unmute them as a meeting organizer. The next option that I want to show you, it's actually called meeting option. Excuse the double wording. And you can reach the meeting option in 3 different ways. One is through the meetings app. So when you are in Teams. The second one is when you schedule a meeting from within Outlook. And the third one, which has just been rolled out in the past few weeks, is accessible when the meeting is already in progress. So when the meeting is in progress, you can see the people that are participating, and this is the icon that takes you to the meeting options. So I'm going to switch back to my window again so that I can show you the meeting options. So I can go to my calendar here, and I can click on the meeting, and then up here I have the meeting option. What can you do with the meeting options? So you as an organizer, you have control of who can bypass the lobby, for example. So you may want to admit people before they can join a meeting. the default is that people in your organization, they just join by default. Otherwise, you can change it. Everyone can bypass the lobby. Callers, you can also allow them to bypass the lobby, so people that actually dial in into the meeting, that's off by default. And this is an automated message that actually calls out people that join or leave a meeting. You're probably familiar with this as well. Such and such has joined the meeting, such and such has left the meeting. And lastly, you can decide who can present in your meeting. You can decide if everybody can present, if you want only people in the organization, specific people which you will be able to choose from the attendee list, or you can decide if you are the only one that can present, and you can then still make, like we've seen before, someone a presenter on the go, so to speak. Okay, so that was about the meeting options. Next, I want to talk a little bit about guests. So maybe you've been in the situation when you have chatted with a guest, or you have invited a guest and they were not able to attach files, or they were not able to even see files. So that's because guests have different roles in Teams meetings, and I want to show you now. Want to explain a little bit that there are different types of guests. So I've called them guests here just because someone can understand what that means. But in fact, guests are external users, and there are two types of external users. One are actually called guests, who are users who have been invited into your organization. They're also called authenticated guests. So someone in your organization has invited a person outside to, for example, join a meeting. In the context of Office 365, it could also be that you have shared a file from your OneDrive or from SharePoint. And so these external people are guests that have been authenticated, and they can access these resources that you have shared. For simplicity, in the context of team, let's just say that guests are external users that have been invited to a team. In contrast, you have anonymous users who are not authenticated, so they're also called unauthenticated users, and they can also join a meeting without registering. Now, there is a catch here. That's why I put a star, is that anonymous users needs to be enabled in the tenant. So it's something that an admin can enable. And for the moment, it's even on or off. So either you can have anonymous users in meetings in your organization, or you can't. So that's something important to keep in mind, especially if you have any restriction or compliance reasons. Now, what can guests do? So guests can share files if you are in a channel meeting. So a channel meeting, we've seen that before, it happens in the channels, all the files are stored in the channel. The reason why they can share files is because there is a storage behind each channel, which is that file tab that I showed you before. And we will see in a moment what that storage is. In contrast, guests cannot share files when they are joining a private meeting, because there is no storage, so to speak, in a private meeting. It doesn't have that files tab. So they can see files that have been uploaded by members of the organization. They can download them, but they cannot attach or upload file. Anonymous users cannot see, cannot share, cannot download any content in any meeting. Interestingly enough, anonymous user can join both private and channel meeting, but they're very, very limited, and we'll see that in a moment. Okay, which brings me to the next topic, which is about document sharing. Yeah, so it relates again back about finding the documents that you have shared in the meeting or notes that you have shared. And you don't really need to know how this works as an end user, but this is maybe more for an admin, or it's important to be aware that Teams relies on SharePoint and OneDrive. So Teams is a very smart application that leverages different services in Microsoft 365. And two of these main services are SharePoint and OneDrive. So SharePoint and OneDrive need to be working or on, let's say, or configured behind the scenes for Teams to provide the best user experience. Now, in this table, I want to show you exactly what different roles in the team meeting can do based on the type of meeting. Now let's start with the easier part. So channel meeting, we've said there is a files tab which can be accessed by member or guest, but even without knowing that there is SharePoint behind the scenes, a guest also will be able to share files within that channel meeting. So I'm going switching again the window here, and basically actually this is what I showed you before already. So files that have been shared in the channel meeting will end up here in the files tab. Anonymous cannot do cannot share files, cannot download anything in channel meetings, but as I said, they can join a channel meeting if that option is enabled. Private meeting is a little bit different because we don't have this library or this storage behind the scenes. In this case, Teams, it's quite smart and it uses OneDrive. So a member of the organization will be able to share a file, and this file will be stored in OneDrive. And a guest, on the other hand, will be able to download this file, but they will not be able to upload anything because they don't have a OneDrive being an external person, pretty much. So they don't have a OneDrive in the inviting organization. Anonymous, they could technically download files as well. This it's a little bit tricky. I can show you a trick here that it can make it work, but I don't want to go too much in detail. I just want to quickly show how the files are shared in a private meeting. So I'm going back now to the chat, which, as you remember, it's where you find your previous private meetings. And in this one is a private meeting that I have done previously, and I also invited external users. And so in this meeting, there have been a couple of files shared. And I'm going here also to show that there was one person of the organization and also one guest. And what I want to show you here is that the files that have been shared, sorry, I'm just in the wrong window, bear with me for a moment. Exactly, so I wanted to show you that the files that you actually share in a private meeting will end up in a folder in your OneDrive called Microsoft Teams chat files. And the file that I was showing you before, which was the M365 licensing that was shared in that particular meeting, now we can see how smart Teams is. So in this case, this file has been specifically shared only with the participant of that meeting. So you can see this is a member of the organization, and this is that external user that was also part of the meeting. So this file has the right permissions already, so that no one else outside this private meeting is able to access it. So this is very smart. So again, you need to know these details because that's the benefit of Teams, that it just makes it happen. I will just mention that if you wanted this file to be available for anonymous users also in the private meeting, you could technically change the permission of this file, and here you could potentially set anyone with the link. This is it's a little bit of a tangent, it's another topic, but I think it's very important to understand that there are different sharing functionalities in 365 and also in Teams. In Teams per se, you don't need to care about this, but if you're interested in this topic, I invite you to look on our website. We have a 3-part blog series that really dives into the sharing options of 365. And yeah, it's something that is really important to know both from an end user perspective, because it's important to understand what the options are, and if you have guidelines and you need to understand how you share files, and also from an admin perspective, it's important to understand what options should be available to your users. Okay, I'm going back to the same slide. Now, this is not really strictly meetings related. It happens in the chat, but the principle is the same where OneDrive is used. Back to meetings. The recordings in meetings are stored in streams. We will see in a moment that only members of the organization will be able to record meetings. Guest and anonymous user will not be able to record meetings. Okay, The next slide is, again, a quick visual to show you what the roles can do in both type of meetings. So if you're a member of the organization in a private meeting, you can share a file. This is the attachment icon. In a private meeting, if you are a guest, you can't attach file because you don't have access to the underlying OneDrive. Anonymous can just chat. They don't even have the ability to do emoji, GIFs, and stickers. In a channel meeting, however, both organizational member and guest can share files because we know that there is a underlying storage capabilities provided by SharePoint. And this is the last bit that I want to show you, that interestingly enough, anonymous user can potentially join channel meeting, but as you can see here, they will not be able to have any chat functionality or sharing of files or other artifacts. Excellent. So the next part that I want to show you is the audio conferencing. Audio conference can be really useful when you are maybe on the way, you don't have a very good connectivity, or maybe you don't have a Teams app for some reason, and you can really kick off a meeting from your phone, or even from a telephone if you still have one of those old school landline telephones. So you can kick off a meeting using just a phone without having the app. So let's see some of the options or some of the features of the audio conferencing. If you have used Teams with audio conferencing or Skype, you're probably familiar with this window. We will see what the different parts of these are, but important to understand for the moment is that audio conferencing gives you the ability to start a Teams meeting from a regular phone. You don't need to use the Teams client, but also important to know that for this to work, the organizer of the meeting needs an audio conferencing license. So this license is included in the so-called Enterprise E5. This is one type of license available in the 365. Otherwise, it can be purchased as an add-on. This may be just information for admin. But it's important to understand that it's only the organizer that needs a license. The attendees do not need a license, so they can dial in without requiring a license. So, if you don't have these options, you may be requesting to your admin if you have the requirement of starting a Teams meeting with your phone. So you can have up to 250 attendees in an audio conference Teams meeting, and audio conference is available in Switzerland. That means you can activate it or you can purchase it. What is not available is calling plans, which is pretty much the Microsoft phone system. This is not available yet, and that is why you need to rely on a local provider here in Switzerland. We at Cycle have partnered up with Sunrise, and this is how we provide end-to-end telephony solution for Microsoft Teams. Okay, let's see what's available when you create meetings with audio conferencing. So if you have a license, this is something that comes up in your Outlook. This is obviously the link to the meeting. This is the dial-in number that you as a participant, as an organizer or participant, will have to call. It can be dedicated for your organization, or it can be shared with, if you're in a multi-tenancy. The location, in this case, it's Zurich. For Switzerland, that's the only local number, and it tells you if it's a toll or a toll-free number. You can also use toll-free numbers. You will need to buy the so-called communication credits through the Microsoft Admin Center, but given that nowadays pretty much everyone has an unlimited calling plan, it might not be worth the extra cost to create a toll-free number. But if you have an audio conferencing license, you can technically have one toll number and one toll-free number in your invite. The conference ID, it's dynamic. That means it gets newly generated every time you create a new meeting. Local number, as I mentioned, is just Zurich for the moment. We will talk about the PIN in the next slide, and we will understand why it's important for meeting organizer. And this is the meeting options which we have covered in the beginning, which allows you to bypass the lobby or decide if you want to have those announcements and who can present in your meeting. Okay, what is the PIN? So the PIN is only required by meeting organizer if they want to start the meeting over the phone. So they don't need the PIN if they're starting the meeting using the Teams app. If you have done this in the past or even in Skype, you probably remember that once you dial the conferencing number, the first tone that you hear is something along the line of, if you are the organizer, please press 1. And that's where you press 1, you punch in your PIN, and that's how you are able to start a meeting from your phone. Okay, so every person or every user who has an audio conferencing number receives a PIN, and you can reset your PIN using this link, which is generated when you create a meeting invite. Okay, 2 more mentions about audio conferencing. You also have audio conferencing options for each user in your Teams admin. As I mentioned before, you can assign 1 toll and 1 toll-free number, and by default they are based on your location. So location is this is more for admin. Once you assign licenses to a user, you can decide in which location they reside. So if they are in Switzerland, they will get by default the Zurich conferencing number. So the local number. You can also, so the conference ID for the moment is only dynamic. There is no option to change it. And you can also, here we have that you can also decide what dial-out permission a user has. This is in relation to what I mentioned at the very beginning when I started that private meeting using the Meet Now function. I said that you can actually type in a number. If you have an audio conferencing license, you can type in a number, you can dial out. That means you can call other people just by a phone. So, and here this is where you can restrict by location, or you can just allow users to call out to any destination. The last bit that I want to mention about audio conferencing, it's called the bridge, which is nothing else than autoresponder for people that dial in into a meeting, and it plays notifications, like we said before, that who joins and who leaves the meeting. And maybe what you're familiar with is once you join a meeting, you are asked to record your name, and that's the option that you can set. So you will require to register your name, and then once you join a meeting, the automated message will say such and such has joined the meeting. Okay. The next topic is about meeting recording. So in case you have missed the meeting or you want to make a meeting available to other users in your organization, or maybe even different time zones, you can use meeting recordings. As an end user, you don't necessarily need to know that these meetings recording are stored in Microsoft Teams, but we can see, let's look at some of the options and what can be done with meeting recordings. Now, some of the prerequisites is that Microsoft Teams license is required. It's most of the time is included in the license that you have because it's quite available. A user to be able to record Teams meeting need to have the upload video permissions, which is also a default if stream is enabled. Maybe one important point more for admins is that there is an option called allow cloud recording that needs to be enabled for users to record a meeting. And if you are an end user, you probably know that you can record a meeting as an organizer, but also another member of the organization can record a meeting. And so the organizer and the recording initiator both need to have this option enabled. And we will touch about this option in the next slide because it's related to data as well, data location. Anonymous user and guest, as you can imagine, cannot record Teams meetings. And then again, for admin, you can allow transcriptions for the meeting, and this is also something that it's can be set in the policy. Now, this option down here, it's what I want to explain a little bit in the next slide, because it's something that Microsoft is currently rolling out as a precaution, as a new setting. So I'll read this sentence and then I'll try to translate it in plain English. Cloud recording is turned off if Teams data is stored in country, but Microsoft Stream is not available in the country. Okay, if you have a tenant that has been created in the last 5 or 6 months, it's very likely that your Teams data is stored in the Swiss data center, because that's where it started when it was turned on. If your tenant is a bit older than that, then your data might not be in the Swiss data center, it could be in the Europe data center. Now, Stream is currently not available in Switzerland. So if your tenant is 5 or 6 months old and your data is stored in Switzerland, then this option for cloud recording will be turned off, because Stream data is not yet available in Switzerland. You can still turn it on, but the reason why Microsoft turns it off is for compliance. So if you have really compliance to have your data residing in Switzerland, so in the country, then you might not want that Stream data would be stored elsewhere. Yeah. So regardless of when your tenant was created, Stream data is currently not available in Switzerland. So if you look at your Stream data, you will see that it will be stored very likely in Europe. As you can see here, however, Switzerland is on the list of regions that are to get Stream data locally in the country. Now, I'm just going to quickly show you how to see if your data, where your data is located. And as an admin, you can see it in your organizational settings. This is something else. This is the data residency. No, if it lets me close this window, I'm just going to refresh real quick here. As an admin, you have a data location under your organizational settings. Let's get there from settings, org settings, organizational profiles, and data location. Now, this tenant is not in Europe, clearly. It's in Australia, but that's where you see where all your different services data is located. And for Stream, obviously, you see it here. If you don't see, sorry, for Teams, if you don't see Streams here, because your tenant might be a little bit older than 5 or 6 months, the other way to find where Stream's data is located is to go into the Stream app. Then you click on the question mark. You know, it's all very straightforward. You click on About, and that's where you see your Stream data. Now, I also have another screenshot here, which is probably something that you will find in your tenant. If you're located in Switzerland, you will see that Stream is probably shown as European Union. Okay. Okay, technically, you can still record Teams meetings even if you don't have a Stream license. Yeah, so again, something that happens behind the scenes, but if you don't have a Stream license, those meetings will be recorded in Azure Media Services for 21 days, and there is no control over this. Then here I have a couple more points about size. So Microsoft recommends that the 1 hour, no, suggests that 1 hour recording is about 400 megabytes. As a tenant, you get 500 gigs of storage, which is dedicated for Microsoft Streams, and then you get an additional ½ gigabyte for storage. Important to remember is that Microsoft Stream data, in this case Teams recording, are stored indefinitely in Stream, so they are not deleted unless you do it manually. Which brings me to the last topic, which is about policies. And so as an end user, if you don't see all the options in Teams, for example, you might not be able to schedule some types of meeting, maybe private, maybe channel meeting, or you might not be able to share your entire screen. You can only share one application. This is because there are policy assigned to you, and so an admin. Admins are able to assign different functionalities to different users, and that's what makes this policy really flexible. So I want to just touch on a couple of policies, and as I mentioned before, you will see that now the terminologies that we have learned in the beginning between private meeting, channel meeting, and Meet Now will become a little bit more understandable. Now, the first one is not actually a policy; it's a meeting settings, and as I mentioned before, it's a global setting, so it's either on or off, and it's the ability to allow anonymous users to join meetings. Okay, so for the moment, it's an all or nothing. The second option is that So we said before that you as an organizer, a meeting organizer, you can decide who can present. From an admin perspective, however, you can also set the default value for who can present. And then meeting organizer can still override that, but an admin can set that organizational wide. Okay, a couple of meeting policies. I'm just going back to the other browser so that I can show you the actual policy. So this is the meeting settings that we just looked at, and there are a number of network settings which you don't have time to get into. But if you look at the meeting policy, probably for admins, it's important to know that you can create different policies, so custom policies they are called, and you can assign them to specific users, right? Now, for example, here you see allow meet now in channels. Now we know what the meet now function is, and we know what a channel is. So this is to allow users to be able to start meet now in channel. And another one is allow channel meeting scheduling. Now we know that we can schedule a meeting in a channel, or if we want to allow to schedule private meetings, so the one that you can do from Outlook or using that meet now function that I mentioned before. You know, if you are, for example, in an educational environment, you might want teacher or students to only create channel meetings. You don't want them to meet in private, or you could have other use cases that you can use. Yeah, but just as a reminder, allow meet now in private meeting is exactly this option that you have up here when you go to your calendar in Teams. So this is a private meet now, which you start, and then you can just invite user or call out user on the fly, so to speak. Audio video, probably not interesting for the moment, but here you can see if you want to allow users to share their entire screen or only part of it. Then you have down here, what I wanted to show you was, if you want to automatically admit people, that's also something that we touched on before, and that's the other option here is the allow meet now in private meetings. Yeah, so that's the option that you have up in your calendar. And lastly, I want to touch on this one, which is the ability to enable live caption in Teams meetings, not to be confused with the live events, which is what we are using currently, which works a little bit different. And we're not covering live events here on purpose because it's a different beast in itself. But this is specifically for Teams meetings. So as an admin, you can decide if you want to not really enable, because you can't enable them. So you can either let them disable, or you can let user turn them on manually. How does this work? I have it here in the next slide. I'm going to go back to this one in a moment. So if you have this live caption disabled, but user can override, as a user, when you are participating in a Teams meeting, you can go to the ellipsis and then you can turn on live caption manually. There is no option to turn on live caption for all users. And I think that was, I think, a purposely decision from Microsoft in this case, but it can be that it will also be rolled out in the future. The last option that I wanted to show you, and I'm going to go back here to the org-wide settings, is about guests. It's something that you find in the guest access, and it's an option to allow or not a meet now for guests. Now, remember, guests are external users that have access to a team channel. And so having access to a team channel, they can start a meet now if this option is enabled. Okay. I think this was the last slide. I want to leave you with a couple of takeaways. So these are the topics that we have covered. But in here, I've summarized really the takeaway from this webinar. So we have talked about channel meetings, which I hope you start implementing them because it's a really good practice. And then we also talked a little bit about document sharing and guests. I hope you understand a little bit more how that works and what's the underlying mechanism if you're interested in that. And then we also touch on meeting recordings and finally the policies by remembering that different users can have different settings assigned based on what the admin has configured. And with this one, I will give the word back to Urs. Thank you very much for joining this webinar. I hope you can, you really can get something out of it, and you'll be implementing it soon. And I hope you to see in the next webinar and maybe in the Q&A soon. To you, Urs.
Thanks, Michele. It was I had the joy. Oh, ich kann ja jetzt auf Deutsch wieder weitermachen. Wir hatten ein sehr lebendiges Fragen und Antworten, Q&A. Vielleicht eine Frage, nicht direkt eine einzige Frage, sondern es kamen 2, 3 Fragen wirklich zu dem Thema, was ist jetzt in Teams, was ist ein Outlook und wo wird Calendaring, warum sehe ich keinen Kalender nicht in Teams? Ich glaube, sehr vieles davon hängt mit Exchange zusammen, aber vielleicht kannst du noch mal 1, 2 Worte dazu sagen. Was ist in Teams, was ist in Outlook? Warum braucht man Exchange?
Yeah, so Exchange is also one of those underlying services that Teams really leverages, as well as SharePoint and OneDrive. So they all need to be activated, so to speak, or enabled, because all the conversations that are happening in Teams are actually stored in Exchange Online. Right, and so the files are stored in SharePoint and partially also in OneDrive. However, Teams basically relies on Exchange for your calendar. So the calendar that you see in Teams is the same that you see in Outlook. So if you create a meetings in Outlook, you can see it also in Teams and vice versa. So Microsoft is also, I think there is in the plan to bring out a more unified user experience for the calendar to make it a little bit more user-friendly, but substantially it's really integrated and it uses the same functionality. Does that answer the question?
Ja, ich glaube, das tut es. Wir werden auf einige der Fragen auch noch per E-Mail antworten, weil in der Kürze der Zeit konnte ich nicht ganz auf alles antworten im Chat-Window, aber herzlichen Dank für die Fragen. Mit dem kommen wir so langsam zum Ende vom Webinar. Vielleicht noch auf einem nächsten Slide, wenn du, Michele. Ja. Danke. Wir begleiten Sie gerne bei der Einführung oder bei der Planung von Teams. Es gibt einige Fragen, das hat sie jetzt auch in diesem Webinar wieder gezeigt, die es geht, bei der Planung zu beantworten. Wir haben ein paar sehr, was soll ich sagen, ja doch innovative Methoden ausgearbeitet, wie man genau zu einer Liste von Requirements kommt. Welche Teams braucht es überhaupt? Welche Channels braucht es? Wo werden externe Sharing und Guest Access benötigt? Braucht es Apps dazu und so weiter und so fort. Diese ganzen Requirements aufzunehmen und umzusetzen in eine Struktur und Informationsarchitektur, damit Teams auch wirklich zu ihrer Zufriedenheit funktionieren kann. Auch wenn es darum geht, ihre Systemapplikation oder Business-Applikation direkt in Teams hineinzubringen oder Teams auch in Kommunikationsszenarien oder Unternehmenskommunikation, Corporate Communications, Intranet-Szenarien zu verwenden, damit man nicht von einer Applikation in die nächste springen muss, sondern alles eigentlich direkt in Teams erledigen kann. Falls Ihnen dieses Webinar gefallen hat, Michele auf dem nächsten Slide. Wir haben einige andere Webinars diesen Frühling durchgeführt. Sie finden hier auf diesem Slide eine kurze Auswahl dieser Webinars von diesem Frühling. Auch auf unserer Webseite sind all diese Webinars on demand verfügbar. Sie können auch zu den spezifischen Themen, wenn Sie etwas davon interessiert, sich diese Webinars on demand anschauen. Oder natürlich noch viel einfacher, nehmen Sie Kontakt auf mit Michele, aber auch mit mir, oder wir werden Sie auch gerne in Verbindung bringen mit einer unserer anderen Teams und Office 365 Experten. Ja, herzlichen Dank für Ihre Teilnahme in diesem Webinar und es verbleibt mir nicht mehr, als Ihnen zu danken und einen schönen Abend zu wünschen und hoffentlich bald in einem anderen Webinar von Cycle. Dankeschön.